Georgia Newman. Nice to meet you.
Okay, we're live, so y'all want to
Yes, sir. Medina Valley, the new one we just opened down the road.
y'all watch my, Mr. Gomez or
Mr. Gomez, Georgia Newman.
Devin, and we're live streaming. Come see the board super. Doesn't matter.
We're just sitting here.
I feel like I'm gonna sit over here then, so when you curl things, I don't get it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, we already opened it last year.
Major game that I work at. So I'm looking to change out the pool. I want to see. We're going to have a meeting, but your guys are the ones that actually change out our tank. And our recommendation is going to be to get rid of some of that.
Don't do it, John. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
Oh, did you? Or you do currently? Where at, sir?
I'm going to think about it in stage one. I want to do it all. I didn't budget.
It's like monkeys, right?
How are you doing?
I'm good. Georgia Newman.
Leo.
Good to meet you.
Work with that.
About $1,600.
Are you good? Good?
Again?
I'm gonna get some foods we're leaving, okay?
Oh, calling me out. Think I'm the diabetic, right?
Georgia Newman. Good to meet you.
It's $1,600 just for the ash, the bacon. I don't know. The gas.
This is our library lady.
Georgia Newman.
The gas marine.
And then you said I'm gonna do round two.
We're leaving it.
Gonna fight, so you're with Edgar Macho? You're with Edgar Macho? So his was way back in the day. At Mario. Yeah, Mario hired me, I'm there. And then I left. Good.
Is there a facility that we can does it, or we just, we do it? So we do it?
Leslie. I'd have to be big and big.
Are anything to drink?
Yeah, I just, yeah. I forgot about it. It's a 30 budget.
Did you? Whatever the call is, the highway was a joke. Whatever it is. It's a for the G's. It exploded and stuck into the and then another one, they landed this way instead of that way. I think that they're fun.
Are you the one working this?
I'm a citizen.
It tastes like bugs.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Or you just start certain guys, so you won't like change the background, make sure you.
That messed me up.
Is that the key?
I love it.
The young one was cool. Did you see it?
Yeah, I like that one better.
It gave you a mustache.
We need that barbecue.
I know.
Yes, sir.
This is, so this one right here is for Steve. Should I just read it all in quick?
Well, I'm not just handing it off.
Okay, yeah. Whenever you're ready. Thank you. Back. Mirror that. Because right now it's
Well, no one likes
He's short but mighty.
Yeah, and the guy was happy to hear that. So that, yeah, they're happy with that.
Not good. We'll try to get them dirt on.
All right, everybody, welcome. We're going to call this meeting to order in 1 second. Yeah. Calling this meeting to order at 4 o'clock, July 18th, 2019. The roll shows that we're all here except we're all here.
Yeah, everyone's present.
All right, everyone is here. I'm going to kick this off with just a little talk to you guys. I appreciate the fact that I think Tim, that's nothing to do with it, that I'm able to be here, honestly, and present my budget, our budget, which will be your budget. We're trying to have a budget right now which will preserve our culture, our history, and but manage, as I've always said, and everybody argues with me, Mr. Sitter, and manage growth. Because our city is going to get bigger, and the only thing that I can find that I can really kind of let you guys understand, and you do know, how big the city could possibly get. And we want to keep it Castroville. We don't want it to be the Dominion here and blah, blah. All this is going to remain Castroville. That's our intent. And each one of you, Sheena, you're over here, and who's District 2? But each one of us, you have your districts. And so you do the policy with the people in your districts. That policy comes up to us. And the policy is going to be based on our budget, hopefully. And hopefully it'll be a budget that we can work at. But if you look at Castroville right here, and you look at all this up here, the blue is our CCN. So, figure it out. We can expect maybe to have all of this. And this is also very important to show you our thoroughfares have not changed. But if we end up with all this, Highway 90 is going to be the only way that we can make money, because nobody's going to get off of it if it's full of traffic. So this budget is to clean up our own house, and we ask for patience as we get nitpicky about trying to find revenues that we already have and get them all. For example, pet licenses, we should be getting pet fees. Every animal should be registered here. Nobody thinks about that. We're going to try to clean that up. We're going to try to clean up home occupation, which you guys are all aware of. And poor Mr. Carey is the only person that is on the home occupation list. Just think of the amount of revenue we are losing. And I personally know people around me that have businesses in their home. And we're not getting anything from that. So we're going to try to clean up our house. And I know people are getting irritated, irritable, and everything else. But our thing right here with this budget and these guys, I need to recognize every one of them. Elliot, And where did he go?
I think Leroy's waiting on
He
the.
ran away. He's waiting for our financial advisor. Is that what this gentleman is?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
They have worked so hard in getting this together. And I have to thank the department heads who have worked so hard getting it together. Because they're getting everything for boards, advisory committees, and they're trying to, please be patient. We're trying to clean up our house first, then we'll do all these grand plans. But one of the biggest cleanups, we have our infrastructure that we have issues with, and we got to get fixed before we even begin to consider building new infrastructure. So I just ask you, council, to get the citizens to bear with us because we are trying to work with them. I don't want to raise utilities. I do not want to raise taxes. If utilities are raised, the only thing that I see, and I talked to Mr. Kelly about it, and Leroy, is the cost of living, perhaps. But I don't want to burden this small piece of property right down here with this. It's not fair. And if you look at your property and your property taxes, I think 20 people in our city pay no property tax. Put that with all of the churches and the nonprofit. We've got a huge amount of real estate that gives us no property tax. We just got to finish building the apartments finished. Do you remember those? That we agreed to let them make them into zero tax property. And I don't know how much, I think 27,000 or something we're going to lose, but they finished that out behind the elementary school. So we really don't have, you can't say the average home value is $250,000 because you're putting in all the exemptions, people that don't pay taxes, nonprofits, and rangelands, stuff like that. They get huge exemptions, but it could be built up later. So anyway, I'm trying to get you to understand that the visions are going to come true once we get our house fixed, and you guys won't have to worry about finding money for the historic district or whatever your particular needs are in your particular districts. So I'm thrilled that we have such a professional staff, and you guys, you know everybody now, right? These are all new guys, but I mean, they got together and we've been talking and working to get what Lee calls a zero performance budget. We kind of made that
Zero
up.
performance-based budget hybrid.
There you go. So what you're going to see in here is maybe some things that you wish we would talk about or we do, but I'm just asking for patience right now and get your citizens to understand that patience is very important because we want to clean up our own house. And they're not going to like it because they haven't done it for years. When I found out I had to pay a pet lot fee from that man over there, I was going, are you kidding me? How much is it?
I think it's $15.
$15. Everyone's pet should be registered in the city. And there's all kinds of little things like that that nobody's ever bothered with. And another thing I'd just like to bring up quickly, code enforcement is a huge issue. I have gotten so much flack about code enforcement. And I'd just like to go over real fast the structure of council. You guys make the policy. So if you have citizens that have these issues, they go to you and you come up with an agenda item or something and get it on the agenda and get your other people together or something. When you put it on the agenda and you say, listen, our code for building maintenance is not strict enough. And when I try to explain that to citizens, because it always comes to me and it's not my person, it's not my thing. It's not my monkey, as he said. It's your monkey first. You guys got to fix this stuff. And I talked to Chief. I have one citizen who has been just very upset because there's a house by her which is it's terrible. And if you look at property taxes, the property tax on that parcel is so low, it's only the land value that's being valued at appraisal. We're losing money not only because of lax code enforcement laws, just superficially looking at it and looks ugly, but also our property tax revenue. And Chief told me, point blank, and told the citizens, our ordinances don't address these things. We don't have an ordinance that says you can't have a corrugated roof on the ground. And that sounds stupid, it sounds lazy, Sounds like we're trying to get out of it, and you cannot imagine the insults, the disrespect the police gets, Ashley gets, because she cannot enforce code. People think she should enforce, because we don't have it, and that's our fault. So, like I said, I'm trying to get everything cleaned up. That's why this budget is pretty cut and dry, and you guys have wonderful people here working for us now. From our department heads to those guys out there on the streets, weekends that we don't pay enough, and I don't know why they're spending, except maybe Lee's cute, I don't know. But anyway, I just like you to take away one thing right now. We're going to get big. We're going to control it. We've got Go Medina, which we are a member of, and I'll bring it up during our next council meetings, because I don't know if everyone's aware of what Go Medina is. It offers us Clay Binford as an attorney. Whenever we have any sort of development, Mr. Binford can help us craft something that's going to help the whole area and make sure that we get quality development. There's also Graham, I forgot her first name now, but she will help us with grants. And grants is the way to go right now. So please, please, please understand, it's not that we're trying to squelch anything or tear down preservation right now. That's not what we're doing. What we need to do, in my opinion, is we're going to have to profit off all the traffic we have till that traffic's fixed. And that's going to be quite a while. So we need to, like I said, clean up our own house first before we start building any new house. So I appreciate your help, guys, and I'm for you. I mean, I'm for you. I need you. I can't do this by myself. And I cannot work with citizens who are angry. I can't do it. I need you guys to work with them first, and we'll come up with ordinances that need to be fixed. P&Z has a problem with us because we say, send it to P&Z. And P&Z gets an ordinance and they don't know what to do with it, because we don't tell them what we want them to do with it. So for example, we say, okay, fix this nuisance ordinance here. They have no clue what we're talking about. So they kind of, what do you think? And then it comes back to us and we say, no, take it back, do it again. And we can't do that. So we got to clean up our own house. And right now, patience. We need patience. And I appreciate your professionalism. And I'm glad to see citizens, and I hope we get some more. And Leroy is going to teach us very important pieces of budgeting that we need to be aware of. And thank you guys so much. I apologize if you don't know how important you guys are to the city and the future development. Thank you. Mr. Leroy.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think the next item on the agenda is the introduction. First of all, I'm going to introduce Christopher Allison. He's with Anita Allison, who's our financial advisor for the city of Castroville. He's going to give you a brief overview of our current debt structure. So, Mr. Allison, you have the floor here. I'm going to pass it down.
Probably easier if I do it. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'll set these up. Thank you.
Three pieces for over.
It is so nice to meet you. I didn't even
Very
know
well.
we had one. It's great to have you.
Well,
Thank you.
Glad to have a chance to be in front of you today.
Great, great, great.
And as you said, Clay Benford, a very sharp bond attorney.
Yes, yes, you.
I'm Christopher Allison, so thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. Castroville is a kind of special place for me, from San Antonio, but from the time I was 12 years old till I was 25, my parents owned a house next to the Landmark Inn and took, just a destroyed old Castroville house and restored it and cared for it, and those were special times. It was fun to add that back to the city and really enjoy it. And it's amazing the difference in the drive from back in those days.
Oh, boy.
Amazing. So when we go for the debt, first thing I would say is you have amazingly low interest rates. I think you'll be shocked to understand what you have. So the City of Castroville has on the second page of this first little handout, general obligation debt of $1,770,000. After your August 1 payment and moving into next fiscal year, you'll start the year with $1,445,000 outstanding. So your debt to assessed value is 0.008%. Out of $170 million. It's very, very low GO debt. You have a AA rating. So for a small city, to have a AA rating is pretty remarkable. You do have a 2012 issue that has a potential for a very, very small refunding savings in 2020 when those bonds are callable. But if they were done on their own, the cost of just having typed in for do this work would negate it. So if there was some other capital need of the city, those maturities might be able to be refunded at the same time. But on their own, it wouldn't make sense. And of the GO debt, 64% of it is self-supporting from city revenue sources. So you're only doing an INS tax rate of about 4 cents when it would take about 11 cents to cover the debt service. So it's revenue sources to cover some of the GO debt.
Tell us what that debt is
Unfortunately, the 2012 issue was a refunding of a previous issue. So I
what was the original debt?
The culvert at Don. That's what I did find is that concrete culvert was built by McDonald's, but on the other side of the road, they might be familiar with it, and it cost a considerable amount of money.
Goes all the way to the river.
All the way to the river.
Under Highway 90, and it goes all the way down to the river. Where is it? Right on the one by McDonald's. It goes right under the east side.
So the 2012 bond issue refunded 2004 bond issue, so we're going back.
2004.
Mr. Allison, if I can interject. There is, the current adopted budget is at y'all's station. What page is it on?
109.
On page 109, you have your debt schedule in there, and at the bottom there's summaries of, whether it's the 2012, it'll say like a drainage or street, it'll give you a summary of what it is.
Yeah, so like in percentage for that refunding, 43% was related to drainage, 48% to the utility, and 7.4% to the airport system. So this is
Where's that?
this is information on the refunding issue.
Oh, and that's the,
Municipal advisory council scores for the refunding.
okay.
So, just over $1.4 million general obligation debt going into next fiscal year. The majority of City of Castroville's debt is revenue debt on the utility system. So as of right now, there's $15,725,000 outstanding. The August payments will take that down to $15,020,000. And I think the main thing I want to point out is the city has been able to take advantage of subsidized Texas Water Development Board loans for the utility system. So your borrowing costs are almost negligible. I mean, 30-year issues of just over 1% average rate, and I'll go through individual issues. The longest bond, individual serial bond you have outstanding is a 1.75% coupon. And then when I go into the bigger worksheets, the city has, tremendous coverage on the debt. If you ever needed to issue additional debt, you do have a massive capacity in the coverage. You might not want to do that, but you have the ability to do it. And then the last page here, I just want to give you representative rates of an unsubsidized issue that would be similar to Castroville. So this is for the city of Hearst. It's a AA rated city. They issued general obligation debt last week with serial bonds for 1 year for 1.4%, out to 2039 at 2.6%. So, very low rates, even if you weren't doing a qualifying project through the Water Development Board. And then if you had a qualifying project, it would be much lower than that. So we've got two worksheets. The first one I just wanted to put in front of you is the general obligation debt. So of this $1,770,000, $1,095,000 is from the refunding bonds in 2012 that went to the utility system, the airport, and drainage. And then there were tax notes issued. It's not it. Okay, here you go. Thank you. Tax notes issued in 2016, of which there's 675,000 still outstanding. That really covers it. So I mean that's the GO debt structure. So the 2012 bonds are callable August 1, 2020, and you say there's 3% coupons on those few bonds outstanding there. So if you're looking at these 21, 22 through 26, 3% coupons, so there is a potential refund that, but that's a very small principal amount. Because your big principal amounts are this year and next year. Any questions on the GO debt? And then the second one is the utility debt, and this is the overall outstanding debt of $14,275,000, and you've got maturities going all the way out to 2047. And there are 5 issues outstanding, and the next page will show each of those individual issues. I apologize for the print size on the next page, but I'll read out.
Work out the bifocals, right?
So when you look at these issues, these were all issued through the Texas Water Development Board. When you look at the 2012 13 bonds that are outstanding. We've got coupon rates of 0.34%, 0.6, 0.82, 1.02, and 1.22. And the next one's also 13. And then if you look at like the 2015 bonds, there were 3 issues of bonds in 2015. From 2016 all the way through 2021, those maturities were all 0% because you had the Texas Water Development Board issue rates and then issue bonds, and then they subtracted a percentage from that, and so it created basically negative rates, and so you effectively got 0, and then you go out to 0.19, 0.42, and a maximum out there in 2044 of 1.75%. And just if you're looking at that 2015 B1, which is the third set of columns there, even though that final maturity is 1.75%. If you look at the interest rate right now, $97,000 this next year on $8.2 million of debt, you're effectively paying, just over 1% interest rate on that debt. So it's been a very effective tool for the city. The last bond issue that was done was a 2017 bond issue, and you got 0% all the way through, I believe, 24, and then a maximum of 1.42 in that final year that outstanding in 2047. So you can look at it one way of, yes, we've got debt we're paying on forever, but you're basically free money, you're paying principal back. That interest cost is just about that. And then, I'll just address any questions you have.
But Mr. Allison, if you could, because we have some new counselors who may not be as familiar with Texas financing, could you explain the difference between a general obligation and a certificate of obligation, just for the council?
Sure. So, general obligation bonds are bonds that the city puts a ballot out, and citizens vote to approve the bond issue, and their general obligation debt backed by full faith, credit of the city of Castroville. Certificates of obligation over the last 30 years have been the dominant issuing type in the state of Texas. Rules have changed very drastically in this last legislative session. But historically, city council elects to issue certificates of obligation. They put a notice out, and if a petition of 10% of the citizens petitions against it, if they don't do that, then those move forward, and they're essentially general obligation bonds. They have a full faith and credit of the city. It's just a much easier process. You avoid the cost of an election. And so for non-controversial projects, city road improvements, stuff that citizens tend to have no objection to, that's been the most effective route to go. When you have something like a big, magnificent city hall, that might be more in line with a GO. The state and taxpayers in general have felt that the COs have been abused and allowed debt to expand very rapidly. So the state has cut back on the petition down to 3% of voters, and so I think COs will still be a dominant form of issuance, but the state's trying to give voters every opportunity to stop that if the citizens don't want that.
Can I ask just a clarification?
Sure.
In the past, if 10% of the people in the city signed a petition, then it would go to a vote. If we're not saying that's dropped 3%?
Yes.
So it only takes 3% of the citizens.
Eligible
to sign,
voters.
Eligible voters, and then you're forced into an election.
Correct.
Is that eligible voters or?
Eligible.
Or
Registered.
Registered. Right, what I'm asking, is it 3% of registered or 3% of the voters in the last election?
No, it's
Well, that's what I want to clarify, because that's there's a large difference there.
I did that in 2012.
Some things, they say it's of the number of people that voted in the last election. And that, something that can change your numbers dramatically, particularly in a small town, but it's of the total.
So now, a lot fewer people can cause an election to happen.
Yes, and you know, basically, you go to the certificate of obligation route. If you feel you've got an issue that voters support, you know, it's improving, and it's a problem when one portion of the city is getting fixed and another portion is not getting fixed, and that's even shows up more in a smaller town than a large city that maybe. So, you know.
How many registered voters do we have? I'm real aware of that, right now.
I guess how many registered voters we have in the city?
1,900?
That's the number I want to say.
About 1,900?
Never seen it.
A little over 1,900.
I was just curious, y'all was trying to figure 3%, I didn't want to figure 3% out.
I know in 2012, when we did the last one, it was 10% of the last mayoral election, which was the highest number of voters. Is how we did it last time.
Deborah, how often does that list get updated? Because I know there were a lot of people on there.
Every year, whoever turns in their change of address or whoever moves in,
And if they
they
don't?
do it through their driver's license, changing of the driver's license and such, and then they send it to the county.
So sometimes people don't do that.
Well, if they're on the list and they have a different address, they, you know, when they come in, they need to, they'll question them, especially if they have their driver's license with them. But, you know, it's up to the person to change it.
And I believe the 2012 refunding bonds for savings are general obligation bonds, and they do not require citizen approval because debt is already outstanding in the city.
Can you briefly describe what refunding is?
Yeah, so basically, I'll describe it and then I'll add it that it's very unlikely that the city of Castroville is going to be able to refund the debt due to the fact of rates close to zero. But, you know, refunding bonds for a city is the same as refinancing the mortgage on your house. Now, traditionally, bonds in cities, rates come lower, they have a call date 3 or 4 years out, and you often do, or have in the past done, advanced refunding, so you issue new bonds now, invest that money in a treasury escrow to pay off the debt at the call date, and then that new debt comes in effect. With the last tax bill that was passed by Congress last year, advanced refundings are no longer allowed by law. And so these are some drastic changes happening in municipal finance from how they've been done for many years. So right now, if you were looking at refunding those GO bonds, we would have to wait until June of next year to be able to file those bonds. We could issue bonds for them. Any questions just about,
So overall, we're good.
you have extremely low volume, that's what I can tell you.
So Leroy doesn't have to be you're certified whatever to check on these things.
Do I need to be certified? Yes, ma'am. Yes, I need to be
That's one thing I'm glad it just kind of popped up here, but our finance director has to be, well, you can explain it better than I can.
As part of the investment,
You certified.
investment act, I need to get certified as well as probably Mr. Elliott here to be able to go and invest funds and according to our policy. So we do that over the next month or so.
Yeah, I'm still certified, so so at least you've got one certified individual. He's got to get his recertification, and we're taking care of that to go. One thing I'll share, the mayor, when she came in, and when Leroy came on board, was about the same time. And one thing all three of us were looking at, when the mayor's kind of saying, let's get our house in order, let's look at things where it's fees or this type of stuff. Normally, low-lying fruit is being able to refinance, especially with low interest rates. Well, our predecessors as administrators and counselors have done a very good job with the interest rates. So that's something we inherited. That's a very good positive, as Mr. Allison said. From the financial side, I think Leroy, Mayor, all three of us were really excited, and this is good news to hear.
Sir, where do you fit in with us? So give me kind of a trade.
So we would serve as financial advisor to the city if you choose us to continue to serve in that capacity. So we would be working, I help file the annual continuing disclosure each year, and those are just kind of free continuing deals. But if the city had a project that you wanted to finance with debt, whether it was utility bonds or general obligation bonds, help structure a new issue around the existing debt to either minimize interest rate or minimize tax impact. And it depends on the city's particular goals on how that structure works. But I work with Clay Benford on the offering document for whoever bonding money is.
So Clay is our bonding attorney, and he works with you, and you work with us.
Yes.
Could you explain it? Oh, sorry.
It sounds to me like Emmy Allison has a lot of credit in terms of the situation we're in, because I know you were here 2 years ago when I came on, so thank you very much.
Could you share the difference of what a financial planner advisor is versus bond counsel, those two roles?
Well, so in Texas, cities that issue debt are required to have an independent financial advisor. So debt, aside from the Texas Water Development Board or a government agency, if you're issuing debt, that can be sold two ways. It can either be a competitive bid process that I would be putting together the offering memorandum with bond counsel, and on a certain date that is auctioned off to bond underwriting firms, which is what I also do on the other side. But in this, we're the independent advisor to you and don't have a conflict of interest, because that's kind of the financial advisor role. The other choice on particularly larger issues is doing a negotiated underwriting where the city, in concert with the financial advisor and bond counsel, are picking one firm or several firms to underwrite that. I think in the city of Castroville's case, we would go competitive, probably in any case.
So Clay, where would he fit in that? He'd be.
I mean, bond counsel is drafting the ordinances, working with the Texas Attorney General's office for approval. But basically, they do the legal side, and I'm doing the numbers side.
Thank you
Thanks for having me.
so very much.
Appreciate it.
It was wonderful. I've got a face to the place. You guys want to take a little break, please? Thank you so much for coming. See you on our page, and I've never looked at you before, so.
I apologize about that.
No, it's not your fault. I mean, you know, it's the next one.
Very informative. Thank you.
I was I'm racing to the.
Trying to make you feel better from earlier today.
I totally didn't have lunch today, so I need to pick me up.
You gotta get this sugar out.
Yes, ma'am.
By the way, the restroom is right here.
Still wild.
Thank you.
Before we start, before we actually get to the budget meeting, I'm going to just kind of read a little bit and just show you a quick video for the video. They're trying to explain multiplication and the mom and dad and the son, so we'll go ahead and start that. Please remind
I figure 75% to you, Mama, and 25% divided between the five of us. Gina, Crowbar, myself, Tom, and Wade. That makes 5% for each one.
Billy, you're cheating yourself. If it's 25% divided among the five of you, that's 14% apiece.
Oh, no, listen, Mom. I wouldn't cheat you. You know I wouldn't. Now, look here. I'll show you. Look this out here. Now, 25 divided by 5 is 5. You see, the 5 won't go into 2. No. But 5 goes into 25 5 times. You see?
You're wrong, Billy. Now, I'm pretty good mathematician. Now, 5 into 25. 5 won't go into 2.
No.
But 5 goes into 5 plus. Now, we didn't use the 2 before, so we'll put it down here. Now, 5 into 20 goes 4 times. 5 into 25, 40.
No, look, Mom. Now, let me prove it to you. Multiplication. 5 times 5. 5 plus 5 is 25.
I'm surprised that you learned. Now I'll show you. 5 times 14 is 25. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5. 25. That's it.
No, Mom. You're wrong. I'll prove it to you. Put down 5 14s here. 14, 14, 14. There. Now, I'll prove to you by addition that 5 14s is not 25. 4, 8, 10, 16, 20,
21, 22, 23. How's that,
All right, well, at this moment, I just kind of want to give you guys kind of a preface and an overview of what we're trying to achieve today and the budgeting process that's upcoming. One thing that we've tried to do, the last couple of weeks I've been reflecting a lot and figuring out what's the best game plan, because we're in a very unconventional situation right now. very end of January, I was here. We've had a lot of staff turnover. There's a lot of new bodies that are in the management position. Over the last couple of years, a lot of the institutional knowledge has left the organization. My understanding, last year's fiscal cycle prep for the budget was very compressed. There wasn't a lot of discussion. There's not a lot of notes available. So one thing to the staff I've tried to relay in the individual meetings with the counselors is to kind of share we're at year zero trying to build a base. And to me, as an administrator with 20 years experience and the issues we're facing is we're on the cusp of some major growth. As Mr. Allison said, I mean, you can see the difference as you drive down 90. With some of the developments that are looking to come here, there's going to be a lot of activity. And one thing that I really wanted to try to do with this budget, number one, is to provide education. And whether that be for the staff, the council who have short tenures, youthful with that, is to make sure we all understand what are the state statutes, what are debt, what are these types of things, to use this to build a base for next year's budget prep to really help. This year, we really want to be able to help build a base to come back this time next year in a more, or actually in a less time compressed manner, where you can do more performance-based budgeting, where you can begin to link, as the mayor is trying to do, to link to our plans. Where are we? Where are we going? If we have a comprehensive plan, if we have X plan, if we have a new Parks and Rec plan, are we implementing these things? And to do that, as the mayor says, we have to get our house in order. And so one thing is there's a couple different budget philosophies. And zero-based budgeting in the late 70s came about. You start from no money, prove why you need these funds. That's one thing the finance director, department heads, and the mayor and I, we've been discussing, we've been game playing. Well, if it's a general fund service and it's in Parks and Rec, should it have a surplus? We're trying to break those things down. Does it make sense to provide this service? Does this position make sense to have it here, or do we want full-time code compliance? Do we move those monies from here to here and meet the goal of keeping depreciation from occurring in our housing stock and increase public safety? Those are the type of measures we're trying to work towards. And we'll actually address those a little bit more as we get to the presentation. But this evening, what we want to do is, from a global perspective, is provide some education, which our finance director will do that, and then we'll get into kind of core goals that we have implemented from the individual meetings and just discussions since I've been here with you guys as a legislative branch. And at this time, Leroy, I will hand over to you.
Do you mind?
Yes, sir. Just signal to me.
Goals.
So speaking of goals, we do want to talk about the goals now.
Yeah, we could do that. Actually, this is one thing, as we've mentioned, unfortunately, due to all the staff turnover, everything that's taken place, normally we're about 4 months behind. In a normal process with a normal staff and everything, I try to begin in January. And what I try to do is you start with a SWOT analysis, a lot of different things, your vision statements, your mission statements, start linking these. Unfortunately, we're under state statutory time compression right now to get this done. And so what we did was to meet individually with counselors and met with the mayor. We met individually. These were, whether they're like bullet points or these types of items, there were a varying degree of things that counselors would bring up individually. And what we try to do is, the finance director listed all the bullet points that, you know, if Lee Elliott said this is the most important thing, we put that there. If this counselor said this, and we try to link. There's 3 or 4 agreed with this point, this point, this point, and you want to try to be able to create 5 to 6 bullet point core items that if we're going to do something or defend something, what we can say is, well, if we want to recruit personnel, how do we do this? And we can link that action, the new item, to this list. And that's a performance-based deal. Building a strong base, cost-saving measures. One thing that we're looking at, the mayor, the budget comes from the mayor's office working with the administrator. Kind of the core thesis of what we're looking at doing is looking at trying to reallocate resources. And that creates a performance-based budgeting item. That way we're maximizing whether it's the structure of the administration or the fees or look at this. The other thing is, and I think right now, until we have everything understood, is not raising taxes. Well, one goal that we're looking at doing is keeping the tax rate the same. The valuation will go up. But you come back next year, you have a very good base, you can start linking if you do need to raise revenue, those types of things. But before we do that, we want to make sure administratively we're operating efficiently. And the other thing is, and this is a very important one, and this is a challenge of being an interim administrator. Off and on, I'm like, okay, well, let's just put this iron in. We can do this. The problem that you face with so much turnover that we have had within the administration, it's difficult to really say, I can deliver a proposed budget that should be a 12-month cycle. Tomorrow, we will begin the re-advertisement of the city administrator position. And one thing that I want to do is provide enough structure in this budget to address immediate concerns and get us moving, but also provide mid-year flexibility for the council, for the new administrator, and the department heads, if you're able to link things over the 6 months of the budget cycle, where you can come back with budget adjustments. It gives you flexibility, because at the midpoint, you'll start preparation for fiscal year 21, but you also can implement the second half of the budget. And so, to me, I'm very impressed with where we're going with this. The proposed budget will be coming up within the next couple of weeks. We should have that to you guys. Process-wise, at that point, once we submit it to you, in the transmittal message, we will bullet point all the variances from this current year's budget that we're doing, and we will link them to the goal, the core components of that. At that time, the mayor, I, and the finance director will meet with you guys individually, and we'll start those public meetings in the statutory process. What I would propose, Councilor Dyer mentioned in our individual meetings, and I think this was a very good item for education. And we would like to have a lot of meetings. When I say a lot of meetings, probably like 4 to 6 work sessions. It's not necessarily, going to be a whole lot of time, but I would like to keep it, if it's in the general fund, there are certain services and sub-funds that are in there. But I would like to start out at the police station and let the chief explain operations. This is where we are. This is going to be part of the restructuring that we're looking at. This is how we're comprised. He can show you some areas that they may need to have things fixed. In as much time as we need. Then after that, we go to the library. The librarian is able to show us some components that he or she needs. When we look at the airport fund, we go to the airport. When we're looking at wastewater, let's go to the plant. We want to keep it to 1 or 2 sub-funds, and that gives you guys a lot of time to be able to hear, one, how it's organized, how it operates, and they can establish a need. The other thing that I've asked them to do is, with personnel, part of our challenge that we're facing right now is filling vacant positions. We're not looking to come with a lot of new positions. The biggest thing I want to try to do is be able to fill the current approved positions we have in most funds. One thing that seems to be a common core goal is trying to get wages and salary up so we actually can recruit and have them there. But I've asked each department to make sure you guys are aware of this. When you come back next year or at the midpoint of the budget of this next fiscal cycle, if we do need another policeman, if we're looking to expand, if we need another wastewater individual, another water individual, during that presentation this year, talk about where we are with the restructuring, but when we're coming back next year, because that is a fixed cost. I don't want you guys to be surprised when we come back, because you may have to look at increasing wages or increasing fees or taxes possibly. I can't say, I can guarantee that's going to happen, but I just want to make sure that it's not a shock that we come back. So we're being as transparent as possible.
And we're not increasing his wages, and we're not increasing his, because we don't care. But we're interested.
No.
We're really, would you explain, like, we have...
One of our biggest, we have, I would say salary-wise, the management staff is at a good level. It's at a competitive level. We can recruit the higher level. Our biggest challenge is mid-level and frontline employees. And as an organization, for whatever reason, we've kept those too low. And it is, as John, God bless him, he does an amazing job. But we're having difficulty in an electrical department. People started out at $13 an hour. You can walk to a neighboring city and start out $23 an hour. It's difficult to bring people in. And so that's something individually that the council has looked at, and I know the mayor has concerned you, and part of our biggest challenge is getting the current positions filled that we have. And the frontline employees will be the most important one, I would say, in this budget for that.
And I'd just like to add one more thing. John came on with a huge mess, and it's been a problem, the wastewater treatment plant. He's been working very, very hard. That's been taking a lot of his time. And so we have Mr., where'd you go? He's hiding, that guy back there. He is in charge of streets. And John is super busy, so Devin.
Same thing.
You know what I was thinking? I was thinking of that, what's that thing, you blink your eyes and... Oh, wait. I'm kidding.
What you call it?
Anyway, he bewitched. He has been fixing streets. And
I thought he was Parks and Rec.
he's Parks and Rec. And how many people do you have?
4.
He's got 4 people.
Parks and Rec?
No, that he uses for streets and everything else.
Streets and Parks and Rec put
Okay.
together this sort of.
And then with the, what word, I was going to use the wrong word, that's not a good word, with the problem with the seal coat, we covered up the drainage, which is the big problem, and so he is trying to fix potholes that we can't really fix because the drainage is the problem, and they're washing out, and again, that's why I ask you for, with our citizens, they have, for patience, because it's an issue right now, and that's why we're trying to clean our own house up. We need to get these things cleaned up. And David and Darren, David, our new airport director, this is another thing. He came in, he walked into that, and walked into the microburst mess. And that's a mess, and it's a lot of money. So these are things, we've got our wonderful department heads that we're really happy with, but we need those guys that are going to boots on the ground and dig those holes and all that kind of stuff.
So did Devin volunteer for streets?
No, did he? I don't know.
It's a combination of both.
Just wanted to see what the answer was.
Voluntold.
I had no idea. I said, who's our streets?
Voluntold.
Devin. He said, yeah, I really like speaking. I said, no, you don't.
Well, and to me, that is symbolic of what your administration has been doing for a while. People, they're pitching in wherever they can help. And so,
They have.
the one thing also, when we're looking at trying to be as flexible as we can until this point in the mid-year and the budgets come back is, we're still, the number one goal when I got here was to control the chaos and keep services moving. And the one thing I will do for everybody, I will applaud. We have kept services moving in a very difficult situation. I now have a team that's come together. Monday, our planning director begins. It'll be the first time since I've been here at the end of January, every management position has been filled. So now we've controlled the chaos, we've built the staff, now we're starting to put the structure together. By the end of this year, your permanency administrator will be here, the chief of police will be selected, so you've got permanents, you're ready to move forward. I want to keep with the restructuring that we submitted with the proposed budget to give flexibility to the permanent, because if you can come back possibly at the mid-year point, it could be the time to add personnel to it. The other thing is, you will have more of a street plan, you'll have more of a parks plan, you'll have more of a water plan, they'll know where the valves are, they'll know where they're lacking. So we're trying to give as much flexibility, but also by getting our house in order with the zero-based budgeting and looking at this, do we put a moratorium on the RV park, which right now is losing money, and give time to implement a base to come back to have a surplus there? Those are the type of measures we're trying to look at right now. And with the restructuring is, can we move monies to implement code compliance? Proactive code compliance seems very important. If we freeze these positions, finance has voluntarily stated that we will freeze a couple positions that frees up money in the general fund. It goes to code compliance. And that helps with revenues and public safety. So that's the way, as a team, we're looking and trying to do. And it seems like when you have those 4 goals and you start linking the actions, we can explain them. Okay. At this time, I think it's you, Leroy.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. One thing that we also need not to forget is that we want to go ahead and try and fill those positions. We also want to keep our employees here. And so we won't, when we go down to our neighboring city next door, go to San Antonio, but we also want to find ways to keep them here. So
Retention.
Yeah.
Retention.
Retention, yes, sir. So, all right. We're going to go on. These next couple of slides are just very basic slides, going back to just educating what is budget, what are some of the statutory requirements, and so forth. So just a few questions here, a few budget questions. What statute governs budget adoption? Well, it's Local Government Code Chapter 102. I mean, by law, we have to do this. Is the annual budget required? Yes. And of course, when must the budget be adopted? No date is required. However, most cities have a fiscal year beginning October 1st, so that prior to October 1st is when the city council must adopt the actual budget for the next year. So in budget, of course, it's tied to the tax rate. Who's a budget officer? Well, section 102.001 says budget officer is a mayor unless the city has adopted a city manager form of government. And city council cannot reassign duties to other officials. You know, can't say, you know what, I'm going to give it to somebody else in council or somebody else, you know, in finance or whatnot. So that's all governed by section 102.001. So the first thing is, you know, we're going to propose a budget, as Lee was mentioning. It must be filed with the city secretary at least 3 days before the adoption of the property tax rate. It must be posted on the city's website. And a cover sheet of proposed budget rates more property tax than in previous years. So in this case, if we keep the same tax rate as an example, but because our assessed values increase, we're going to get some more revenue in. So therefore, we'll have to have a cover sheet explaining, hey, it's going to raise the budget. The proposed budget will raise more revenue from the property taxes. So just keep in mind, we'll go more to that as we're discussing the tax rate. But our assessed values, we should be getting into certified values next week, which is a good thing. So by that point, we're going to work with the county to determine those projected revenues for taxes. So I'll detail those as soon as we get to it. After the budget, the proposed budget, we have to have a budget hearing. So at least 15 days after the proposed budget, filed with the city secretary, but before the date of the tax sale. It must be published in the paper between 10 and 30 days before the hearing. They must include that statement that I mentioned before, and then of course action must be taken at the end of the hearing. And we can have up to 2 hearings if you would like. So, after the hearing, you're going to adopt the budget. So budget adopted after the budget hearing, but for the tax rate adoption, separate ratification vote of property tax revenue. According to Senate Bill 656, back in 2013, we have to have a cover sheet for the adopted budget, basically just saying what the budget's about, what it consists of, and so forth. Stated the budget raising more or less on the same amount of property taxes as the previous budget. Record a record vote, so, you know, if someone voted on the actual budget, it must be individually, you know, each vote individually like that, instead of just saying how high or nay. So, of course, we'll post it on the website. So, these are some of the budget deadlines. Of course, July 25th, which is next week, the chief appraiser certifies the appraiser roll, so we'll get that in on that day. August 29th is the last day for budget officer to follow the proposed budget with the municipal clerk city plans, or to wait until September 29th to adopt the actual tax rate. September 1st is generally the last day for cities to provide notice of the proposed tax rate by publication or by mail. September 15th is continuous internet, TV notice of tax rate public hearings. In this case, it would be the actual website and the paper. 2 tax rate hearings must be held starting at least 7 days after notice. The city is a market taxing unit and adopt the rate that exceeds the effective tax rate. September 18th is the last day of published notice of the budget hearing. The 23rd is the last day for the first public hearing on tax rate, if there's an increase or not. The 26th is the last day for the second hearing. As I mentioned earlier, we have 2 hearings. If needed. September 28th is the last day of the hearing on budget. September 29th, city should adopt the budget no later than this date. So we must first hear the deadlines. I have an actual calendar that I'll definitely share with you at the next meeting, what our dates consist of. So these are all just by law here. The tax rate adoption timeline is a little different. So July 25th, the chief appraiser certifies the appraised roll. September 1st is the last day to provide notice of the tax rate by mail, by publication or by mail. 2 hearings. And of course, the 29th is the last day to adopt the tax rate. And there below, Senate Bill, go back. Senate Bill 1760 says 60% of the governing body must vote in favor of the tax rate. That is the effective tax rate. So overall, the big picture here, the first thing is we're going to have a proposed budget, and then we're going to have a budget hearing here. The budget hearing is when the actual public has the ability to make public comments. And then, of course, we're going to adopt the budget. And then the last thing we're going to do is adopt the tax rate. So those are those four things that proposed budget, budget hearing, adoption of budget, and then, of course, the adoption of tax rate. We can't have a budget hearing and adopt the tax rate on the same day. So that's the order that we need to follow there. This is F5. This is the new Senate bill that's going to be effective January 1st of 2020. It's also known as the Texas Property Tax Reform and Transparency Act of 2019. It was passed just recently, back this year actually, but it's effective January 1st, 2020. And basically what this is, the Senate Bill 2 reforms the system of property taxation in three primary ways. The first one is lowering the tax value or the tax rate that a tax community can adopt without lower approval and requiring a mandatory election to go above the lower rate. Make numerous changes to the procedure by which a city adopts a tax rate, and making several changes to the property tax appraisal process. And as we get more into the actual budget workshops, I have more information to give you guys. So right now, I just want to kind of just briefly talk about Senate Bill 2. Yes, sir.
Are you saying that the new Senate Bill 2 is going to be effective after we do this budget?
Yes, sir.
So it doesn't apply?
It doesn't.
It applies to the one we do next year?
Correct. But there's a few things that we have to follow, that I have to follow before I have a deadline by September 29 to give certain tax rate worksheets to the county by law. So, but I'll give you more information on that. I went to a budget workshop up in Austin, and the mayor we went last week too, and they talked about this new bill that was coming out, and there were some FAQs that I can certainly share with y'all.
I just want to get a clear understanding, so we can still,
we're going to do this.
we have 8% still for this process.
For this coming
Just
year.
like we had last year.
Right, until next year.
And then
Next year we will.
next year, when we do the 2021 budget, we will be limited to the new 3%.
Yes, sir. Absolutely right. But I'll get y'all more information. I just wanted to briefly give you an overview of what Senate Bill 2 was. And I know some of the wording, like effective tax rate, rollback rate, they're going to actually change the name on some of them. So, I mean, I'm not sure why they're doing it, but they're doing it.
Smoking mirrors.
So just real quick to talk about the different fund types. We have general fund, we have enterprise fund, we have airport fund, as well as special revenue. And these are just brief descriptions of what the general fund is. And basically, it's the chief operating fund of the government. And some of those funds that include is public safety, parks and rec, admin, city council, city administrator, as an example, are all part of the general fund. Enterprise fund is basically a utility fund. Water, sewer, gas, electric, and so forth. And of course, you have the airport fund, which is the airport fund. That's all it is. And you got special revenue funds. Those are the special revenue funds. Some of the examples are on the next page. They consist of, like the Alsatian House, Liberty House, Port Security, and so forth. So these are the different departments by fund. Under general fund, as you can see, these are every subgroup belongs to the general fund. So really, in reality, when you approve the general fund budget, you're approving each budget line item for each one of the sub-funds, as well as the enterprise fund, followed the airport fund, and the special fund. And as he was mentioning, when we want to have those budget meetings with each department, we may, hey, it's city secretary is going to go ahead and present our budget along with the library as an example. And then police and so forth. So it's a lot of fun. You really can't get away from some of these funds. When I got here, I thought, why are there so many funds? Not funds, sub-funds, I guess. But after doing a little bit of research, it makes sense that we have to actually have all these. So, but of course, airports are alone by themselves, so understand that you're
But do we need to have it by itself? Isn't it an enterprise? We're calling everything enterprise rather than utility?
Well, utility is an enterprise fund, but it's a utility fund, but it's broken out by general, enterprise, airport, and then there's special. As far as whenever we get audited, those are the four different fund types, but under enterprise is the actual utility fund.
Yeah.
The most accurate, these are common Texas terms, but in public admin books, it usually would be a utility enterprise fund, because an airport fund actually is an enterprise fund. In the global sense, enterprise means for-profit business like.
Oh, right.
And what about the water acquisition? Is that a special?
No, that's going to be under
Utility.
utility fund. That's under the enterprise fund.
Public Works Water.
So it's just water?
All right. You have under the general fund, you have police, that the police have on control, and then under special, you have police department training. Why is that not under special instead of under?
It's a special fund that, do a brief and talk about your police department training, why that has to be separated.
Because of the DEA funds and the other funds that we can funnel into that, they can't be put under the general fund. We have to keep them separate because they're,
Special earmark?
yes.
So all
Most of those are highly restricted funds, usually from federal or state.
Right, correct. It's our asset forfeiture seizure fund, and we get the OC money from the state every year, and that goes to every department, and they're earmarked, and they're going to be used for certain criteria.
Is that why the DEA forfeiture is over there also?
Yes.
So you have the certification to do it?
Right. We have to be real careful with those. When we spend money out of it, we got to document it.
So pretty much, these are pretty much all restricted as far as what you can do with it. Whereas general fund, you could do whatever with those funds.
Just a question, throwing it out there. What did the chamber have prior to us separating from the chamber? They would have had the Alsatian, Beery, that's it?
Did they have this Steinbach house or was that?
Alsatian, Beery,
That's the same.
Oh, that is the Steinbach.
Chamber had the Beery House, that had always been the Castroville Colonies Association.
so now it's Castro Colonies Association,
It was from the get-go.
but it's still called the Beery Fund.
That's what it's like, you guys have any audit, it's called.
Because when it was a Beery Fund, it was just a fund to get the money to restore the Beery. Yeah, that didn't make any difference. Okay.
Next.
So we talked about the different funds, now let's talk about the sources of revenue, and as we get to more of the revenue part of the budget workshop, in the next week or so, we'll get more detail as far as what the revenue means. But in this case, in our current budget, our sources of revenue are sales tax, property tax, fees, and other miscellaneous revenue. Our biggest revenue source is the sales tax. As you can see, 39% of our general fund revenue is derived from sales tax. So this is from sales revenue. Property tax is another large source of revenue for the city of Castroville. It's about 29% of the general fund. Followed by fees, which includes like court fees, park and recreation fees, and so forth. That's about 25% of the budget. Followed by just the miscellaneous from permits, fees, and so forth. It's about 7%. So again, it's very important, that we collect our sales tax. And I plan on part of our, next week you'll have when we go ahead and present the quarterly financial report, the investment report. There's a part on there as far as what we collect from the quarter Indian sales tax. I'm not sure if in the future or previous I've ever actually had that. But I want to give you an update, whether it's once a month or every quarter, to let you know about the actual, what we collect in sales tax. So that'll be
The sources of revenue, that is for for everything or for the general fund?
That's general fund.
Okay. Where does it say, showing here for the general fund, the transfer from the utilities to that, which one of these is that under?
Well, that's not really,
Where's that?
That's not really a
it's
revenue
not really
source.
revenue, it's not really cash that we're receiving in.
Well, it's a revenue to the general fund, so.
It's not considered a revenue, it's a transfer.
Administration.
It's pardon?
It's not considered a revenue, it's a transfer. It gets into accounting type matters.
It's more of an accounting entry. We are physically moving the money every month from one fund.
They're just reimbursing for admin services, so it's not really, sales tax and property taxes and fees are the only revenue sources, right? I mean,
So it's called a budget transfer?
yes, sir, it's a reimbursement is what it is, because you have a finance director or the city administrator providing services to the utilities, and to pay for that, it's all coming out of the general fund, and they just send money over to reimburse us for that.
And what I'd like to add to this, that was one of my pet peeves, because we always had these transfers and nobody understood what they're for. And these two have really worked hard in trying to cost out, how much administration is done in there or here.
And let me parlay with the mayor. Hilda, Leroy, and I have met with the auditors. what I've done in previous cities is, because a lot of times the transfers, it's hard, what's in there? There's about 800.
How much generally transfers from the enterprise fund to the general fund?
800 to 900 is kind of in the, 700 to 900 off and on through the years from what we're
That's
looking
all,
at.
it costs that much for administration?
We
It's
don't
hard-
know.
Well, it's hard to say, but what we're going to do in the proposed budget that'll be coming to you guys to help simplify this is we're going to cost out through payroll the admin source that's coming in. And there's a couple different ways of doing it. You can estimate your time that you spend on things, or you can do proportionate budget. If you got an $8 million utility fund compared to a $2 million general fund, that's a 4-to-1 ratio. So you can calculate Leroy's time, amount of checks staff are doing, customer service, and those types of things. But by doing that, we will have a summary of the positions and how much the general fund pays for it, how much water, wastewater, gas, or XYZ. That way it's understood. But when we do that, there's also some other areas that also need to contribute. They have not been contributing also back into it from time. And so, but we will have that in the transmittal message to make sure the percentage. And if the council would like us to change it a different way, we're completely open to it.
May I say one more thing? If you look at our transfers, they have never changed. And we're funding salaries. I mean, it's obvious our personnel have changed, but our transfer for this administration has never been explained or costed out. It's always been the same.
That's exactly what's been
Yeah.
hit on the head. In my time here in Castroville, I have never, ever received what I would consider to be an adequate explanation of the justification for the transfer.
Yes.
And I, as a council member now, I'm getting pelted by citizens who want me to explain to them, why did you make this transfer? And I really would like, at the end of this budget process, to be able to explain it. And I hope we will get into that level of detail.
They are. These guys are wonderful. And they're doing that.
And I agree with you. And the reason I brought this up is because without the utility fund, the city wouldn't be able to exist the way we are. And that explanation, that's why I asked how much moved over there and what's it for. Those are great questions.
And I'll share, when I first came in, I'm looking at these transfers, we meet with the auditors, and I say, I think your previous staff were above board, were not necessarily hiding stuff necessarily. A lot of times it's just the way it's always been done. I've been in other cities that do that. I have always tried to be as transparent as possible. I think that meets with you guys, meets with the mayor, and how we're doing it. The other thing is, it's very difficult to get accurate cost for utility rates, water rates, or even your tax rate if you're subsidizing and you don't know how you're doing it. We had not been providing the auditor, and that's not their role to figure it out, what is, but we had no support, right, to figure out those rates. So we're just asking questions, as you are, as I am.
The biggest hurdle that you have is we've always done it that way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's the biggest hurdle you've got.
Well, and I think it's been done that way since before we had automated accounting.
Yes, sir.
Seriously? So how long ago was that?
Start back in
For computers.
Yes. And so I was easy to
1980.
say, I think this is enough to cover it. Write a check for that amount.
Yes, sir. Because there would be varying degrees. There wasn't a huge change, but it could be there's some that have 900, some that have 700, some that have 800, and we're trying to figure out.
So how do you
I have
see,
at least one workshop just on transfers.
Yeah.
So we can get into the nitty-gritty of every single transfer.
And as far as previous transfers, we don't have the back end. I've researched, I've asked auditors, they were not providing the support. They're just giving the number, hey, here's the number that we're going to transfer. But our goal is to go ahead and try to get that cost proportion out for the salaries.
And that's that zero-sum base that we're talking about. We're not trying to slow things down or not do as much, but to me, if you can go out and explain, or you can explain to your citizens, it doesn't,
It gets those numbers.
that helps.
They say we need this much for things, but we don't know why.
Yes, sir.
And we've never known why.
And I can't defend it, your finance director
When
can't defend
I was mayor, I asked, and I never knew why, because I never got some good answers. And
See,
I've heard.
the long-term problem is, it happens so often in repetitive budgets that it becomes folklore. And then it becomes, oh, that's the law. That's the way it's always
It's
done.
always been
And
done.
nobody can explain it.
It's always been done.
I'm all in favor of explain it.
How do you smooth that over with an auditor? I'm sorry.
That's right, because I have an interesting piece of information regarding the property tax that one of my constituents sent me today. River Trail, where my house is and everything, we have a drainage easement behind our property. Well, for years, Medina County has put the property tax appraisal of our houses lower because of it. Well, this person just got their property tax, and they are not keeping with that. And it was not kept, so they went and had a review board protest hearing, and supposedly it's going to be adjusted, so that's going to impact, if you think it's coming to you, well, apparently not now. So that's just one other thing that's going to help.
So you're saying this affects transfers?
This affects transfers, revenues.
Well, he's just saying your tax base is not gonna be what you think it's gonna be.
Yes.
Right, but he's gonna have a solid number when he comes to us. That'll all really be cut and dry.
You're gonna be shocked.
Yeah, next week, whenever we get the certified rolls, it's gonna include in there as far as what the total exemptions to the city. And so I think that's one thing question you had asked.
I'm doing a map personally. I'm sitting there taking our map, and I'm going by property number and looking the appraisal, the current appraisal up on each property, because there are some of you that have certain areas. River Bluff is relatively rich. I mean, they've got high property taxes. But you have people that, you know, they have DV and all that kind of stuff, which I don't even know what that is, but it doesn't matter.
Disabled veteran, I don't have to pay property tax
But
for the rest of my life.
Well, it doesn't. I don't mean you, but we have disabled DV and we've got household. That's the only two I can find. So someone might have a property tax of $7,800, and depending, well, you guys know that the household, being a household, it's dropped $1,000 or something like that. But our appraisal values have gone up so high that it's not going to affect us this year.
The discount rates are very poorly understood.
I know.
And it would be very helpful in the public hearing.
I'm going to ask.
Have a short set of slides. For example, I'm a disabled vet. It doesn't mean I don't pay property tax. I just get a percentage off.
Right.
It's a very small percent.
And we can get
Well, but it
Well, one
just
thing that
depends
I've
each
done
individual's rating. I'm 100% disabled, so I pay no property tax.
I think if you look at that closer, you're going to find that's not true.
It is true. I'm 100% disabled. I brought my paperwork to the county. County says you pay no property tax on. And I have many DVs in my neighborhood that they're different.
That's what we have to make sure.
Correct.
Well, and one thing that I've done before in previous seasons in Texas is have the appraiser come when we begin to have these discussions. That way, you can ask them there, because that's out of our bailiwick. We don't control
It's
that.
pretty much already over, past the deadline for the
But
county.
it's very
Yes, sir.
important,
Yes, sir.
because that map will show you in each one of your districts, because I color-coded it, and you'll be able to see the properties that have no value with the homestead, and they're only counting the land value, which I was talking to the chief about. We got to get those properties up with stringent codes. In her situation, I don't know if that's a possible change. I think we could stop the 65 exemption for the city. That's included in, our 65.
I believe you can reveal
But
that.
we
I'm not
can't
sure.
do that.
I'm
I
not
mean,
sure.
that's not a consideration. No.
You want to touch Social Security, because
You might as well get a rope and find a and swear.
But if you guys
wanna try
really
to go
want
after
her,
that.
she will come and talk to us.
Do we have a representative that serves on the board?
No, we need just Dixon to come over here, because she was going to explain it all to me, because I had no clue that that was taken off the top. And then they just averaged all these, property taxes.
well, even just for informational purposes, I think that would be a good education.
Yeah,
to have.
absolutely.
So,
Along with the transfers that way.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, let me ask you something too. You said when you're talking about these transfers with the auditor, that don't throw a red flag up to her or him?
Well, from the
That
discussion,
they're not cut and dry, clear?
they don't review transfers, is my understanding.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Well-
In previous cities, they've not reviewed it. For whatever reason, gas being audits, that's not necessarily reviewed. Yes, sir. That's- Yeah.
If we had the right amount of dollars coming in and the right amount of dollars going out, they're happy.
But the one thing I
Robbing
will
Peter to
say-
pay Paul, basically, and so they don't.
And I think this
concern
falls where
themselves
you
with
were
it.
going, Mr. Byers, the one thing right now that's gone on, and it happens in almost every city, your utility enterprise funds, monies are taken over here. The problem that you face when you do that, if it is above admin support that is warranted, you depreciate your infrastructure at a more rapid rate, which leads to either a lot more capital improvement, which is a delayed fee increase, or you are going to move forward a lot more quickly with debt service. I mean, and that's what robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Because you're not capitalizing your utilities.
Yes, sir. Our electrical system is a major issue that we're going to be facing over the next
And
couple of
it's not
years.
fair that we're not paying our license, these little things that you would never believe, because we're going to catch people no matter what. If they have exemptions, we're going to get that money in another way, which is, a pet license, which sounds stupid. If we've got 1,000 people in here, and that's even saying lower, and each has 3 dogs,
I was going to say, 9 years ago, when I got my first pet in Castroville, I put registered him, I was number 0063.
oh my God, only 63. Do you know, Chief, how many we have now?
I'm scared to look.
Scared to.
Well, some of the licensing
But
are
the one thing,
for
and
life.
this is a discussion I've had with the mayor and
license is for
maybe
life.
some of the individual counselors, is fees versus taxes. Lee Elliott has 2 dachshunds. If my dachshund bites you, animal control will respond to, I generated that, and it's a fee-based service.
Right.
Taxes, you want to mitigate subsidizing that.
Yeah.
So if you look at fees, or even if you look at water fees, anything above the base rate is, if Herb Dyer has a pool and uses a lot of water, he has a volume. It doesn't affect me if I don't use much.
Right.
So the mayor's philosophy is try to look at fees versus taxes.
Yeah.
Because fees are more like building fees. If Lee Elliott builds a home, that benefits me. It doesn't benefit Todd.
It also puts the onus on the person who's actually doing something, right?
Yes, sir.
Exactly.
Yes, sir. And so that's philosophically what we're trying. I mean, we are scraping through, we're scrubbing. The other thing is looking at the drainage fee. It barely services our debt right now. But you have nonprofits who generate a lot of drainage. Walmart generates a lot of drainage.
Yeah.
If you do it volumetric, you will get more money. Herb Dyer's home generates a lot less drainage than the
Yeah.
Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And so the difference between a fee and a tax, a fee can be administered on the water bill, a tax you can't. So the service is actually charged with the generation.
That would also increase the promote permeable surfaces rather than non-permeable.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir. The other thing is, as we're talking, we all are aware, we have major drainage and street issues, right? We can all shake our heads right now, there's no denying it. We talk about streets individually, I think Mayor, you hit this or someone did, but we got drainage issues. Our drainage system, the conveyor, are our streets primarily, right? We have base drainage in the top. Well, if you always talk about streets separate from drainage, you're never going to be able to fix these things.
Essentially, we have a percolation system. Puddles sit there until they sunk into the ground.
Yeah. Or you call them traffic control devices. I mean, that's, but the way I'm trying to make it, it should be synonymous. The one thing I told the mayor, it should be a right-of-way discussion. But if you always separate drainage from your streets, I don't know how you ever fix your streets.
And would you explain our drainage fee? It's not for drainage.
It's for debt, well, it's for debt service.
It's
is what
financing
it's for.
debt.
It was the
That's
culvert y'all were discussing when he was, it's something I think that really needs to be reviewed over this fiscal cycle. And to me, it should be more, as we're saying with fees, it should be, if you've got a footprint the size of Walmart, not to pick on them, they create a lot of drainage. Herb Dyer does not.
And
so,
traffic.
Yes, ma'am.
And
so,
don't cities have street fees? I mean, traffic?
well, property taxes are really your street fees
That
per
would be
se.
it?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. But we're kind of digressing, but I get excited.
Well, it's good though, because we want you guys to talk. I know you want to get out of here, but
Yeah.
these are things when we do our budget. Think about it. I mean, property tax is not going to change. We can't do anything. We need to get the money from something else and we can do it.
So speaking of that, I'm just curious about something you mentioned. You said that you're trying to allocate all these fees or whatever to the user. And you mentioned the Catholic Church had a larger footprint. Okay, they park on city's property. Are we going to claim that as theirs and charge that to them? I want to watch that.
They use our how do we know they use our?
I don't know what you can do, it would have to be owned property, I would assume.
I realize that, but it's used as a, I just want to watch you do that with the Catholic Church, so that's going to be.
Then why would that be there? I don't understand. So you want to charge them?
No, I'm not saying I want.
How can you charge them when it don't belong to them, is what he's saying.
Oh, we're not charging them.
That would be, probably- I mean, that would be.
No, I'm understanding, yeah, they use it. But he's,
So are we going to, if they're using public
Bad
property,
habit,
you know,
I would never touch that. If you want to touch it,
that's
go
what
for
I'm
it.
saying, I don't want you to touch that.
Well, you can come back on the flip side, our police park right at the church parking lot. I mean, those are just as a bad example.
Yeah, we got 3 parking spots,
Yeah.
so they let us use there.
Good, but yes, sir.
So,
there's just another example.
There's examples, but the one thing is, it's not a tax, it's a fee, and nonprofits can pay from what they generate.
Right.
And so, as you said, it actually incentivizes to have more pervious surface. I mean, those are just options. I would rather look at doing a fee like that generated by somebody than y'all raising your property taxes higher, which, when you say get lynched, that, I think would happen.
But like Paul said, it's a burden on those that don't have the exemptions and that have to keep their homes up. So it's not 250,000 average home here. And we can't go by development. Oh, it's more than 250,000. Well, gosh, I hope so.
Well, in another example is like cross connections. They're not making sure each residence has a meter.
Yeah.
Your debt is in the base meter. It's not in the per thousand volume. So if people are cross connecting or don't have meters and they should have individual, Mr. Byers is paying more money with his utility rates to subsidize those people. The more meters you have, the lower your rate is in the fees to do it. And so that's something about getting your house in order when you begin to get code compliance. The other thing is we have some grease issues. Where are they coming from? That's impacting your wastewater treatment plant. Code compliance actually can keep wastewater rates down by affecting those things. And so by getting our house in order, once again, you're keeping fees and rates lower.
And now, just remember that franchise fees, right, in legislation, they have been kind of lowered, so we're not going to get a lot of money from franchise. And the, that other one, permits, remember we can't do them by value.
It's important now, you're correct, the legislature always favors the corporations when it comes to franchise fees. But Texas law provides that municipalities can set their own as long as they have ordinance. And that's why we passed the ordinance last year. So we're in the category of cities, we have an ordinance. So they can't come in here and tell us to just take over.
Well,
they have to negotiate with
We
us.
need to check that, because the budget, I asked about it specifically at the budget workshop that he and I attended, and they said it does affect everyone, especially with this 5G node
Yes.
stuff.
There's going to be big money in that.
Okay. And then the can you explain that? We're changing that. We have to change.
With evaluation, and we'll be bringing something over the next couple of weeks to
Just
you
for
guys.
summary, baseline.
There's a statute that you could not go by valuation for building permits, but there's certain things that we can do that is pretty much a zero-sum transaction. And so we will be bringing that to you guys over the next couple of weeks. And it shouldn't affect our permit total.
That's right.
Leroy?
Almost done, promise. So speaking of property tax, this is a 5-year history of the property tax rate in the city of Castroville. We're currently at 0.508853, slightly increased from the prior year. And so I just did a quick calculation of how to.
And the reason that increase was the INS went up, I believe. Right. So that's.
And here are the actual hearing and the
Could you
actual.
explain that real fast, INS?
With property tax, you have M&O, which is maintenance and operations, and that can be salaries, that can be asphalt. INS stands for interest and sinking, and that's your debt service. The debt service went up this last year. Y'all lowered the M&O.
But the bottom line is, I mean, we can't lose sight of it. Well, when the budget gets done, we're going to know what operations and maintenance costs are.
Yes.
We already know what debt servicing is. It's pretty scientific. But we have to build a budget that doesn't cause that M&O number to skyrocket, because that calculation is done automatically by the county, not by us. It's based on what our budget says is maintenance and operations plus interest servicing. So we got to build a budget that keeps in mind, we control that, what that number's going to be by what we put in the budget.
If we have some other workshops on property tax and the tax rate, we'll come up with different examples as far as we're going to keep it the same, we're going to increase it by revenue, we're going to increase it by a cent or whatnot, we get this much revenue in return. So right below is just a quick calculation of how to calculate your tax rate based off of this current rate here. So just based on the $250,000 average home, you take the tax rate times the value equals this number here, divided by 100, and this is the actual.
The city's portion.
The city's moving correct. So this is the end of the actual workshop.
One question.
Yes, sir.
This has been very helpful.
Thank you.
But something I haven't seen that I really need to see before I sit down in budget meetings, I need to see an organization chart of the city.
That's what they will do.
And with the proposed budget, we will have that in there, and that's what we'll meet individually before we even have the presentation to go over it.
This is the big thing. Believe me, they have costed out these positions as well as the transfer with, to me, it's O&M also. Because we're going to see the administration that's needed to get these funds from us. So you guys, they're wonderful. I cannot.
And this was very basic, and I appreciate y'all listening to this. And so as we go further on into the budget process, we'll have some detailed conversations with revenue and expenditures. But these are just a quick 3-month look ahead to see when you want to have those budget workshops with the staff.
Here's a question on budget workshop.
Yes, sir.
Does the law treat them the same as meetings?
Yes.
So we have to follow the same rules?
Yes, it has to follow.
We need to get it planned out.
Yeah, because she's got.
And what we would plan to do is, we would like to come Tuesday with kind of some set dates to let y'all know. The one thing Leroy would like tonight, and I would like in the mayor, is frequency of meetings, because we would like to spend more time on a more narrow portion of each fund if we could. Would you guys be open to meet at least weekly or bi-weekly possibly?
About 3 times a week.
Come on now.
We're starting, it's August, we got 1 month.
No, I know.
We got 1 month to finish.
I start back teaching, I can start back teaching in school on 12 August. So I'm
August 12th. Deborah, any input? He won't be here after 12 August?
Well, he'll be here, but it'll be late, correct?
I can be here.
Yes.
You know,
You just can't have
It'd be
a early
late.
meeting.
4:30.
It'd be later on in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I can be here like at 4:30, that's not a problem, but
No.
I can't do a midday
Right.
meeting at that time.
Okay, that's good.
I wouldn't be against more meetings and shorter intervals like you're talking about.
And then you can kind of absorb what he tells us, because you guys, you're not gonna.
Should we start as early as next week after Tuesday, or do you want to the week after? I mean, I think
I'm
it's-
gonna be out of town next week, Wednesday to Sunday, which would be the 24th to the 28th.
So maybe the 29th, maybe the 29th. right?
Yeah, anytime after that, I would be available.
I'm available anytime, as often as you want.
The 1st of August is court, so we can't do it.
Next week.
I'm out of town the 22nd of August through the 26th, bringing the kid back to college.
22nd through the 26th?
Yes, ma'am.
26th is a Friday.
22nd.
22nd's Monday.
August.
Oh, August, I'm sorry.
Well, it sounds like though everybody is more open to having.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those ones, I think with the way the budgeting process has worked recently, the more we can get to the microscopic level and explain it, it helps all of
And I
us.
think for the most part, everyone's available at least these 3 days for sure. And we have that 2 or 3 days, it's up to y'all, to get these departments in, get their budgets done, and then go to the next one so we can finish. So once we get done with expenditures, we can work on the revenue part of it. So,
Can we tentatively pick days now? You guys, are you okay with that or not?
Let's maybe come back, because we can't really make decisions today.
you guys need to get your.
Do they direct us as far as, hey, work out the dates for this?
Yeah,
month?
yeah.
We got a council meeting, what, on the 23rd?
Yes.
So. I'll be gone Wednesday the 24th
3 weeks.
for a few days.
If y'all are giving just basic directions to the staff to look at it, to see if possibly these days are open, we can come back by email or at the council meeting and let y'all know.
Since we have to have everyone here, or you said what?
It is considered a special call meeting, so you have to have at least 4 members here to hold the meeting. Even though it's a work session, it's still considered a special call.
How early can we, how early in the day, I guess? Is it 4 o'clock on board, or is it any time during the day, or?
Later in the cycle, that would affect you, right?
Up until 12, I'm still goofing off.
Possibly the 29th, 30th, or 31st, maybe do it after lunch or have a lunch meeting or morning.
After lunch probably works. I've got morning obligations, not later in the day.
I'm pretty flexible when I'm here. Other than that 24th to the 27th,
No.
I try to schedule doctor's appointments in the morning for my wife, so,
That's
but after
important.
lunch is fine. Huh?
They're excellent. It's so good to,
No, everything's been very informative today.
yeah.
On top of the table, clear.
We'll certainly put some dates together
Clear.
for Tuesday, and then we'll also include like our actual hard dates for when we're gonna approve the budget, the tax rate, the hearing and so forth, so we'll get that to all.
Yeah, you'll send us some perspective days when we get back as to
Yes.
available, so that works.
By email, Deborah,
That's fine, I can do that, no problem.
or whatever. I mean, phone call, text message, email, don't matter.
I can send something out beforehand, and that way, or give you some times to where, you know, you can kind of make sure by your schedule, it's not a problem to come mid-afternoon or something.
All right, thank you all so much.
I'll say from the
Thank you. You
administrative side,
guys are wonderful.
Thank everybody for being here. You too, Darren.
Mayor.
One citizen.
No, I meant out there.
Mayor. No. You have to close the meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. This meeting will adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting adjourned at
5:43?
Right eye, left eye.
Thank you.
Very good.
How you doing? I'm doing okay.
Those